In 1955, the average American man weighed about 166 pounds, spent 10 hours a day on a concrete floor, and ate 3 meals cooked from scratch. He never read a nutrition label. He never counted a calorie. And he was leaner, harder, and healthier than most men half his age today. Then, one by one, the foods that built him were banned, pulled from the shelf, or quietly reformulated into something his own body would not recognize. Here is what nobody wants to say out loud. None of that was an accident. A strong man is hard to push around. A sick, soft, tired man is easy to sell to, easy to medicate, and easy to manage. So this is not a list of old recipes. It is a list of 25 foods that made men physically powerful, and the exact story of how each one was taken from your table, who profited when it disappeared, and what got put in its place. That last part is the principle that ties this whole thing together. So stay to the end, because the final swap, number 1, is the one that rewired everything else. These foods were not lost. They were replaced on purpose. Let's count them down. Number 25, raw milk. In the 50s, glass bottles landed on the porch before sunrise, straight from a local farm, still carrying living enzymes, natural, fat-soluble vitamins, and the kind of bacteria your gut actually wants. A working man drank a quart a day and thought nothing of it. Then in 1987, the FDA banned raw milk in interstate commerce, and most states fell in line. So today, it is a legal gray market, sold as pet food in some places, treated like contraband in others. The official reason was safety. But notice what happened. The one milk with its fat, its enzymes, and its minerals still intact became the one milk you practically need a connection to buy. The Amish never stopped drinking it, and people drive hours out to their farms for a reason. They did not have a study telling them it was alive. They could taste that it was. Number 24, lard. Every good kitchen in 1950 had a can of it by the stove, often the drippings saved in a coffee tin. Pie crusts, fried chicken, biscuits, eggs, all of it cooked in rendered pork fat, stable, cheap, and made of the same kind of fat your own body is largely built from. Then Crisco, on the market since 1911, and the shortening companies ran a decades-long campaign to convince American mothers that the fat their own grandmothers had used was killing the family, and that the factory stuff was modern and safe. The cruel joke is what came next. Those hydrogenated oils, the ones marketed as the healthy replacement, turned out to be loaded with trans fats, the single most clearly dangerous fat ever studied. And the FDA finally banned them outright, with full compliance in 2018. Lard, the original, was never once illegal. It was just shamed off the shelf to make room for something with a longer shelf life and a fatter profit margin. They didn't have a trans fat study in 1950. They just never trusted a fat that came out of a chemistry set. Number 23, beef tallow. This was the fry fat of America. The corner diner cooked its fries in it, and those fries were better, and the men eating them were thinner. Even McDonald's fried in beef tallow until 1990, when a single pressure campaign pushed the whole chain over to vegetable oil, and the fries were never the same. Tallow has a high smoke point and stays stable under heat instead of breaking down into the unstable oxidized compounds that cheap seed oils throw off when they get hot. That stability is exactly why every serious kitchen used it for a century. Picture the timeline plainly. The country got dramatically fatter in the very decades it stopped frying in animal fat and switched to the oils that were supposed to save its heart. Now that same tallow is creeping back into jars on the shelf at a premium price, sold like a rediscovered miracle. It was never a discovery. It was a return. Number 22. Liverwurst. Braunschweiger liverwurst. The liver sausage in the waxed paper at the deli counter. This was how an ordinary man ate organ meat without ever thinking of it as organ meat. A sandwich at lunch delivered a hit of B12, iron, and vitamin A that no muscle cut can touch. It cost pennies. Over the decades, supermarkets pushed the boneless, bloodless, convenient cuts, and a whole generation lost the taste for the most nutrient-dense food in the building. Nobody banned liverwurst. It just got quietly embarrassed out of the American lunchbox. Number 21. Beef liver. Call it what it really was, the original multivitamin, and it grew on the animal for free. A single serving of beef liver carries something like 100 times the vitamin A of a steak, plus B12, iron, folate, and copper in a form your body absorbs easily. In the 50s, a mother served liver and onions once a week without a word of complaint, because that is simply what you did. Today, fewer than 1 man in 20 eats organ meat with any regularity. No law banned it. A slow cultural sneer did the work. The idea that liver is poor people's food, beneath the modern man, when the truth is, it was the cheapest path to a strong, well-supplied body ever sold in an American store. The cattlemen of the Old West prized the liver and ate it first, warm, before anything else. They taught us to be too proud for the food that built us. Number 20. Raw milk cheese. The sharp, aged farmhouse cheese of the old country and the old farms was made from milk that was never heat-treated, dense with flavor and living culture and the enzymes that come with it. Then the rules came. To this day, any raw milk cheese sold in America has to be aged at least 60 days. A single regulation that quietly wipes out an entire category of fresh, soft, living cheeses that men in Europe and rural America ate for centuries. The harder aged cheeses survive the rule, so you can still hunt those down. But a whole world of real cheese, the young and the soft and the alive, was legislated straight off the American shelf in the name of uniformity and safety. A rule you never voted on decided what cheese you're allowed to taste. Number 19. Cod liver oil. Every morning in 1950, kids lined up for a spoonful and they hated it, and it worked anyway. One dose carried vitamin D and vitamin A straight from the cod's liver and into a growing body, real insurance against the rickets and the winter sickness that used to bend children's bones. Doctors recommended it. Grandmothers enforced it. Then the taste fell out of fashion. The warnings about too much vitamin A got loud, and the whole ritual slid quietly off to the supplement aisle. Here's the result almost nobody connects. Over those same decades, vitamin D deficiency in American adults went from rare to routine. Common enough now that your doctor tests for it. And an entire billion-dollar industry sprang up to sell you back, in a capsule, exactly what was in the spoonful your grandfather choked down for free. They didn't have the lab work. They had a grandmother who would not be argued with. Number 18. Sardines, bones and all. A flat tin of small, oily fish eaten whole, with soft, edible bones included, was a poor man's powerhouse, rich in calcium, omega-3 fatty acids, and protein, and there was almost no way to overdo it. Men ate them on crackers at the workbench. They never went away exactly, but they got crowded out by skinless, boneless, flavorless fillets, and by eating only the muscle of the fish, we threw away the bones that carried the calcium. Smaller fish eaten whole were one of the most complete foods on earth, and we traded them for convenience and a milder taste. Number 17. Oysters. Long before anyone sold a testosterone booster in a plastic tub, men ate oysters, and oysters are about the most concentrated source of zinc on the planet, the mineral your body actually needs to make testosterone. They were cheap once, shucked by the barrel in every working city on the coast. A food for dock workers, not millionaires. Pollution, overharvesting, and price turned a common man's food into a luxury on a bed of ice. The mineral that helps build a man got moved behind glass, marked up, and then sold back to him in a pill at the vitamin store. The cure for soft men was sitting on ice the whole time. Number 16. Real butter. In the 50s, butter sat on every table in the dish, and men spread it thick on bread, potatoes, and steak without a second thought. Then margarine, a cheap wartime substitute that started life dyed yellow to look like the real thing, got rebranded as the modern heart-healthy choice, wrapped in official-looking seals of approval. And by the 1970s, it was outselling butter for the first time in American history. The punchline landed years later, when the trans fats packed into that very margarine were tied to heart disease and yanked out of the food supply. Butter never disappeared and never deserved to. It just spent 40 years wearing a villain's coat that belonged to the fake sitting right next to it on the shelf. They demonized the cow and sold you the factory. Number 15. Farm eggs, yolk and all. A man in 1950 ate 3 or 4 eggs for breakfast, yolks included. And the yolk is where almost all the nutrition lives. The choline, the fat-soluble vitamins, the real building material for a body and a brain. Then the cholesterol panic hit. The heart authorities warned the public off dietary cholesterol starting in 1968, capping people at 300 milligrams a day, when a single large egg has about 186 milligrams, and egg eating fell by nearly a third over the next 20 years. Decades later, in 2015, the official dietary guidelines quietly removed the cholesterol cap entirely and admitted it was never a nutrient of real concern. The eggs were innocent the whole time. But 2 full generations grew up cracking the yolk into the trash, eating the rubbery white, and throwing away the single best part of the egg. 50 years of fear, and the verdict was, never mind. Number 14, bone broth and real gelatin. Before it came in a carton, broth was made by simmering actual bones for 6, 8, 10 hours, pulling out collagen and glycine, the raw material your body uses to rebuild joints, skin, and the lining of your gut. Even Jell-O used to be real gelatin rendered from animal bones. That is the whole reason your grandmother fed it to you when you were sick. It was medicine before it was dessert. The modern version, pressure cooked clear in 30 minutes and filtered for the shelf, carries a fraction of the collagen the slow pot delivered. We kept the name on the label and threw the substance down the drain. Number 13, bone marrow. Roasted marrow bones were a delicacy a poor family could afford. Scooped hot onto a piece of bread, pure fat-soluble nutrition and the richest taste in the kitchen. It built strong men because it is, almost literally, the stuff bones are made of. It disappeared from the ordinary table as cuts got standardized and butchers stopped bothering to sell the bones. And now the very same marrow shows up on restaurant menus at a markup that would have made your grandfather laugh out loud. Number 12, scrapple and head cheese. This is nose-to-tail eating. The parts of the animal a thrifty family refused to waste, ground, seasoned, and turned into something a working man ate before a hard shift. It used every scrap of nutrition the animal carried. Squeamishness and supermarket convenience killed it, and with it went a whole philosophy that you honor an animal by wasting none of it, and that the so-called scraps were very often the most nourishing part of the whole beast. Number 11, real cured bacon and ham. Old world bacon and ham were dry cured slowly, over a week or more, with nothing but salt, thyme, and air. The industrial version replaced that patient curing with fast chemical injections of sodium nitrite and a brine pumped straight into the meat, pushing additive levels far past anything the traditional product ever carried. Then, in 2015, the World Health Organization's Cancer Agency classified all processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen and put out the figure that 50 grams a day, about 2 slices of bacon, raised colorectal cancer risk by 18%. The headlines treated a slab of a farmer's slow-cured ham exactly like the cheapest mass-produced hot dog. The science never drew the line between a week-long real cure and a chemical shortcut done in an afternoon. The blanket warning did the food industry's sorting for it, and the heritage food took the blame for what the factory had done to it. They blamed the salt to protect the chemicals. Number 10, sauerkraut and brined pickles. Real fermented vegetables, krauts and pickles made in a stone crock with nothing but salt and thyme, delivered a flood of living lactic acid bacteria with every forkful, often tens of millions of them per gram. The gut health men got for free decades before anyone thought to sell it in a capsule. Industrial pickling killed all of that. Today's shelf-stable kraut and pickles are almost always pasteurized or simply soaked in vinegar, a process that drops the live bacteria count by 1,000-fold, wiping out the cultures that were the entire point of fermenting in the first place. We kept the sour taste and sterilized the benefit right out of it, then started selling the bacteria back in a pill at the pharmacy. Same jar on the shelf. Nothing alive inside it. Number 9. Raw honey. Before high fructose corn syrup flooded into everything in the 70s, the sweetener in an American home was often raw, local honey, full of trace enzymes and pollen, used by the spoonful, not the gallon. Corn syrup was cheaper to produce and easier to pump into 1,000 products, so it won. And the national sweet tooth got hooked on the one sugar with none of the redeeming qualities. The bee did it better. We replaced her with a factory because the factory was cheaper. Now everything so far has been a single food, taken one at a time. But if you think these were random losses, wait until the last 5, because that's where you see it wasn't a string of accidents at all. It was a pattern, and somebody benefited from every step. Keep counting. Number 8. Slow sourdough bread. Real bread used to take all day. A sourdough left to ferment 12 hours or more, let wild yeast and bacteria break down phytic acid, the compound in grain that binds up iron, zinc, and magnesium and carries them straight through you. So the slow ferment unlocked minerals. The fast loaf leaves trapped. Studies of traditional fermentation have shown it can cut that phytic acid roughly in half. Industrial baking threw all of that out, swapping the slow ferment for chemical leaveners and bromated flour. And bromate itself was tied to cancer and banned across much of the world, though it lingered in America for years. The loaf that rises in an hour looks the same on the shelf, but it leaves the minerals locked away, even as the label proudly shouts the word enriched, a word that exists only because the process stripped the grain bare first. Fast bread, they learned too late, feeds nobody. Number 7. The raw egg and milkshake. Here is one straight out of the old gym culture. Before protein powder existed, serious men built muscle by blending raw milk, raw eggs, wheat germ, and honey into one glass. It was a recipe handed around weight rooms in the 1950s and the 1960s, and men put real size on with it. It worked because it was just dense, whole, unprocessed food in a fast form your body recognized completely. The supplement industry did not invent the protein shake. It simply took a 1950s farm kitchen recipe, stripped it down to a powder, and sold it back to you at 10 times the price. Number 6. Grass-fed beef. In 1950, nearly every steer in America finished its life on grass, and grass-finished beef carries several times the omega-3s and far more CLA, the conjugated linoleic acid tied to a leaner body and lower inflammation than the grain-fed meat that replaced it. Then the feedlot took over. By 1980, more than 90% of American beef was grain-finished in industrial lots, fattened fast on corn and soy in a fraction of the time. Cheaper by every measure and quietly stripped of the very fats that set the old beef apart. The cut on the plate still looked like beef and still cost like beef. But what lived inside the fat had been engineered out of it, one feedlot at a time, and almost nobody noticed the trade. Same steak on the outside, a different animal underneath. Number 5, whole raw cream and full fat milk. This is the one they fed straight to children and then quietly took away. Whole milk with the line of cream risen to the top of the glass bottle was the standard in every school cafeteria and every icebox in America. The fat and the fat-soluble vitamins still in it. Then, the low-fat crusade reached the schools. The cream got skimmed off the top and sold separately at a profit. And a generation of kids got handed thin, bluish skim milk and told it was the healthy choice. Here is the part they did not explain. The vitamins in milk, vitamins A and D, are fat-soluble, which means without the fat, your body can barely absorb them. So skimming the milk does not just remove calories. It strips out the very nutrients that made milk worth drinking. They took the most growth-building drink a child had, sold the best part back as a separate luxury, and called the leftover water an improvement. They skimmed the strength off and called it health. Number 4, wild game and pasture pork. Venison from a fall hunt. Pork from a pig that lived outside and rooted in the dirt. This was the meat of the American man before the animal became a factory product. Real meat from an animal that moved all day and ate what it was built to eat carries a different fat, a different mineral load, a different everything. Factory farming made meat cheap and constant, and stripped the life out of it in the process. The hunter and the small farmer kept the real thing alive, and the system spent decades regulating, licensing, and pricing them toward extinction. Number 3, mineral well water and real salt. Two things at once, because they were taken the same way. Well water on the old farms came up from the ground carrying real calcium and magnesium, the minerals your heart and muscles actually run on. And the salt on the table was unrefined, full of trace minerals along with the sodium. Modern municipal water is filtered and softened until most of those minerals are gone, and table salt got refined down to pure white sodium with everything else stripped out. Men in 1950 got a quiet daily dose of minerals from their water and their salt without ever thinking about it, for free, and both got processed down to nothing, while we were told it was an upgrade for our health and our pipes. The most basic things on the table, water and salt, got hollowed out too. Number 2, the seed oil swap. This is the big one, the change the comment sections never stop talking about, and they are right to. Across the back half of the century, the stable animal fats men had cooked with forever, butter, lard, and tallow were systematically replaced by industrial seed oils. The soybean, corn, and cottonseed oils squeezed out of crops with chemical solvents and high heat. Cottonseed oil started as a waste product of the cotton gin that somebody figured out how to sell as food. These oils were never a tradition and never a health food. They were cheap, they were abundant, and the same industry that made them helped fund the message that animal fat was the enemy. They went into everything: the fryer, the bread, the snack, the salad dressing, even the baby formula. And American waistlines and chronic disease climbed in lockstep right beside them. The fat your great-grandfather ate came off an animal that morning. The fat in most of what you eat now came out of an industrial press, and your body can tell the difference even when your tongue can't. They didn't just take one food off the table. They changed what fat itself was made of. Number 1, the war on saturated fat. This is the doctrine underneath every other thing on this list, the keystone that pulled the whole table apart. In 1977, a Senate committee, led by Senator George McGovern, published the dietary goals for the United States, and with one document drew a red line through saturated fat, the fat in butter, eggs, red meat, and whole milk. The exact fat that had built generation after generation of hard, capable men. That single policy did not change one food. It rewrote the rules for every food at once. Milk got skimmed, beef got demonized, eggs got feared, butter got replaced, and the hole left behind got filled with refined carbohydrates and cheap seed oils. The official saturated fat ceiling, under 10% of daily calories, is still federal policy today. And over those same decades, as fat intake fell and the experts kept congratulating themselves, obesity in American men did not just rise, it roughly tripled. Here is why it sits at number 1. Every other loss on this list flows out of it. Once you convince a whole nation that the foundational food of a strong body is poison, you can sell it anything: the margarine, the skim milk, the seed oil, the breakfast cereal, and then the pills for the diseases that follow. A strong, well-fed, clear-headed man is a hard man to govern and a poor customer. A tired, sick, soft one buys forever. You do not have to believe anyone sat in a room and planned that to see plainly who profited every single time the real food lost. So no, these were not old foods that simply fell out of style. They were the right foods, taken on purpose, and replaced with something that pays better. The men who ate them were not lucky. They were fed. And the strange, hopeful part is that almost every single one of these is still out there, on a farm, in a tin, behind the deli counter, waiting for any man willing to walk past the marketing and pick it back up. The food that built your grandfather never stopped working. We just stopped eating it. So tell me, down in the comments, which one are you bringing back first? The raw milk, the tallow, the liver, or the eggs? Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. He stood on his wife, his children, his crew, his neighbors, his word at the bank. Reliability was load-bearing. When a father in the 1960s looked at his son, The question under all the others was always the same. When the weight comes, and it always comes, will this boy hold? Everything he taught was an answer to that one question. He wasn't making the boy happy or clever or even rich. He was making him dependable because he understood something we have half forgotten. A man's life is measured by what can safely rest on him. And the highest thing anyone could say about a man, the thing those fathers were quietly building toward from the very first handshake, was the simplest sentence in the language. You can count on him. These aren't old lessons. They're the right ones. And maybe the reason so many men today feel like something was never handed down is that, for a lot of us, it wasn't. The chain skipped a link, but a chain can be picked back up by any man willing to start holding the standard again, for himself first, and then for whoever happens to be watching him next. So tell me in the comments which one of these you're going to bring back first. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.